Can we upgrade these League Battle decks? Hey everyone, it's me Joji, and yes, we are going to be taking a look today at both of the League Battle decks, both the Shadow Rider and the Ice Rider decks to come out. And honestly, as you can kind of see here, 3 of a kind of each of the V and VMAX cards for both Shadow Rider and Ice Rider is crazy. And at the price point of $30, it's not bad, especially if you take a look at the cards inside, which we will in a second. But can we make these better? Well, that's what we're going to try and find out today. I have some ideas, and I've seen some ideas here and there, so let's take a look at what those ideas could be. Now, here are the boxes for each one of these. As you can see right off the front, you do get a 3-3 line of each of the Calyrex, which is not bad, in my opinion, for the price point. And then on the back, it does show you the lists of everything that we'll go over in a second. But honestly, these decks alone, getting them to just take parts out of it or use these cards and then replace the main Shadow Rider or Ice Rider is honestly a great idea. We'll take a look at these in a second. I think what we're going to do is start off with the Shadow Rider. So let's get the stuff out of it in a second. Okay, so other than the 3-3 line of the Shadow Rider, Calyrex V and VMAX, as you can kind of see here, we do get the League Battle deck box here with all the other, I believe what would be 54 cards in it, some dice to go with your deck, as well as 2 acrylic, metallic looking, but they're actually just plastic, burn and poison counters, some instructions on how to play this deck if you wanted to just start off with this thing instead of a starter deck like the level 1s. This is a level 3, I believe. Obviously a rule book in case you need a refresher, and a code card to get this online. So give me another quick second and I'm going to get these cards out of here organized so you can see what exactly comes in this deck. Okay, so what else do we get in this deck? Well, we get a 3-3 line of Cresselia here, which is actually not bad when you take a look at its Crescent Glow attack. This can synergize really well with getting those energies needed onto your Calyrex V early on in the game. So we do run a 3 for that there. Then we have it followed up by 2 Articuno. These are the Galarian ones, which work similar to like the Moltres and Zapdos, where you can use its ability to attach energies faster to it. That way you can attack sooner. Again, you want to be very aggressive with a Shadow Rider. And then following it up with a single Pumpkaboo. Now this one is probably to get rid of any pesky stadiums that you don't want, especially now that Path of the Peak is very big in the format. Using a Pumpkaboo is really important. So that's why it puts one of those in. And honestly, this is all the Pokemon it comes with. I would prefer to add some other things, as you'll see in the upgrade. But for now, let's move on to the trainer cards. Starting off with a 4-4 line of Professor's Research, which is an iffy choice 4 line. Nowadays, you maybe see like 3, 2, sometimes even 1 Professor's Research. But to go with that, which honestly I think most people will be running anyways, are Marnie. We get a 4 line of Marnie here, followed by surprisingly 3 Boss's Orders, which was a surprise to me. Most people only run 2 in any deck, so that could be something where we can thin out to add some cards in. Followed by 4 Quick Balls. That way you can grab pretty much anything here. You can get your Pumpkaboo, your Galarian, Articuno, Cresselia, or your Calyrex. There isn't a lot of evolution, but we do actually run 4 Evo Incense specifically for the Shadow Riders to get them up a lot sooner. So this is a way you could do it. You could also use Ultra Balls if you really needed to. But again, I don't know why we run Professor's Research. You don't want to be discarding too often, but we'll find a way to mitigate that in a second. We also follow it up with 4 Fog Crystals, again, to grab your Pokemon, or if you need to, an energy a lot sooner. Followed by 2 Great Balls, which you can get rid of these probably in the upgrade, which we might do. We don't need Great Balls. You can replace them again with Ultra Balls, or if you really wanted to, you could even put some energy switches to take advantage of that Cresselia. Followed by some switches. Not bad. 2 is okay. Again, it doesn't have all heavy retreat costs of 2 here. Pretty much everything is 2 or 1, so you'll be fine for the most part. We have a ordinary rod. Now this you can use to get back your Articuno if it does get knocked out. I don't really see it used for anything else other than the Articuno and some energy. If your Pumpkaboo or Cresselia gets knocked out, you could use it for that. Most likely you want to get one of these two though, and some energy. Now we do run, because again, as I mentioned, all these have really low retreat costs. They included Air Balloons, which is an amazing addition. I'm confused as to why they made this deck really good. Again, it is a League Battle deck, but sometimes they're not that great, as we've seen in some of the past ones, but this is actually pretty crazy. And remember how I said we don't want to be discarding too many things, so I don't know why they included the professor's research. Well, they made it get that with some training courts. That way you can grab those basic energies that you need. So really, I think they thought of pretty much everything. They even included a total of 15 energy to help you out, so it's crazy. This is a really good deck as is. So finding a way to upgrade this is going to be really hard, but I'm going to try my best and try not to take away too many of the good things in this deck. But there are a few things that we could get rid of, as I mentioned. Professor's Research, Great Balls. We could get rid of the Galarian Articunos and replace it for a different Pokemon that I have in mind. But we'll see that in a second. Let's take a look at what the Ice Rider has in its box. So in the Ice Rider deck, we do get a 3/3 line of the VMAX. So honestly, really worth it here. We get a 3/3 line, plus obviously the League Battle deck container here with the rest of the cards we'll see in a second. Some dice, which I took a look at the other ones. The only difference in these two is the big dice. This one's purple, this one's a lighter blue, see-through almost. You get the acrylic, poison, and burn counters. Again, some instructions on how to upgrade, or I really just play this deck. We get the instructions and of course a code for the deck for Pokemon TCG Online. So let's go ahead and open this box up and see what we get. So obviously we do get the 3/3 line, but we honestly get one of the best lines I have seen in any League Battle deck ever. We get a 4/4/2/2 line of the Sobble Drizzile double Inteleon type. We get both the Shady Dealings line and the Quick Shooting line. This is a lot, to be honest, and we could probably cut these down a bit. In my opinion, you don't need the 4/4/2/2, but if you really wanted to run this as is, this is one of the best, I don't know what to call them, I guess Inteleon line draw support. It honestly is one of the best lines ever to come out to Pokemon. This thing is so iconic in the current meta. You can see this in Arceus decks, Palkia decks. Heck, you could probably see it in almost any other type of deck you can think of, even if it's not a water type or even use water type energies. And that is literally it for Pokemon. They took up all this space with just this Inteleon line. But we did get some really good trainer cards, like this 4 line of Melanie, which is going to be great for attaching energy to that Calyrex VMAX, especially since it discards energy when it attacks, so you want to be able to put energy on it consistently. Followed up by a 3 line of Boss's Orders. They really are generous with the Boss's Orders this time around. Followed by a 2 line of Marnie, which is starting to look very territorial to Palkia for whatever reason, because then we have a 2 line of Professor's Research, followed by 4 Quick Balls and 4 Level Balls, because we need ways to get the Sobble and Drizzile onto our bench, plus Evo Incense, both for the Drizziles and the Inteleons, but also could be used for the VMAX. Some Capacious Buckets to get those energies back once we discard them. 2 switches, 2 Air Balloons to help us move our Pokemon around. Again, this, like the other deck, is not very heavy on the retreat cost, so putting an Air Balloon on one of these Pokemon makes it a free retreat. And finishing off the trainer cards, probably the best thing if you're trying to run Ice Rider against anything that has an ability for their V Pokemon. Some Path to the Peak. This thing is meta breaking. It can stop Mew VMAX's Genesect from using their ability. It can stop Palkia VSTAR from using its VSTAR ability, as well as the Arceus VSTAR. This thing is very important in a lot of decks if you want to mitigate it. And since this guy has no ability, we don't have to worry about it affecting our own deck. But it will affect that Shadow Rider. Oh, and it does come with 9 energy. It's smaller count compared to the other deck, but it's because we have Capacious Bucket and Melanie to recycle those back onto our Pokemon. And that is the list for both the Shadow Rider and Ice Rider decks. Let's get on to some upgrades. Alright, so starting off with the Calyrex side. Now, we are obviously going to be still running Calyrex as our main Pokemon, but we are going to be adding in a 4th Calyrex V, because you usually want to have a 3-4 line of the Pokemon you're mainly playing, and then you can add whatever cards you need, like these 2-3 line of Mewtwo V and Mewtwo VSTAR. Now, the reason I put this in is because it only needs 2 energy to attack, and hitting this Star Ray for 120 can really make it a lot easier to knock out your opponent's Pokemon with the Calyrex VSTAR. And plus side, you can use Underworld Door to set this guy up. Heck, you could even make a deck out of these guys, as you may have seen in the previous deck upgrades with the Pokemon Go decks. We did have a Mewtwo VSTAR deck, but that one wasn't as expensive because it's supposed to be more budget friendly for Pokemon Go players who are new to the game. But this one, it's a league battle deck. You want to make this super competitive. If you can add these guys in, definitely do it. And moving on to the last few of our Pokemon, we still are using the 3 Cresselias that came with it and the 1 Pumpkaboo that came with it as well. These are great to have. The Cresselias, if you go second because the opponent chooses to go first, you can use Cresselia's, I forget the attack, Crescent Glow, which I've used multiple times in my Mewtwo VSTAR deck to buff up these guys a lot faster with 3 energies instead of 1. And of course the Pumpkaboo to get rid of any pesky Path to the Peaks that the opponent might play. This is a must, especially since you're only running a few trainer courts. But speaking of trainers, let's go ahead and show off what we're using here. Now, we do run the professors we did get. We're running the 4. We're running the 3 bosses orders. We've bumped this down to 2 Marnie and then a single Roxanne. Now, we needed to make space and Marnie seemed like the best place to do it, but we do want to have a Roxanne in there. You are running a VMAX Pokemon, so when this guy gets knocked out, you're losing 3 prize cards. And then you can use a Roxanne to retaliate and make it a lot harder for them to play. And all those cards they just got would most likely go back into the deck and won't be usable for a while. Moving on, let's take a look at the item cards we're going to be using. We're going to be using those 4 Fog Crystals we did start with, as well as the Quick Balls. Let's put them over here. The 4 Evo Incense is what we're going to be running. The 2 Switch, an Ordinary Rod, and 2 Air Balloons. Now, we did get rid of the Great Balls because honestly, they're not necessary. We have the Fog Crystals, we have the Quick Balls here. If you really needed to use something, don't use a Great Ball. Use an Ultra Ball instead if you wanted to replace those. But let's finish off the items with the 3 stadiums we're still using, which are the training courts. As I said, we only run 3, so having this Pumpkaboo to get a 4th push out for whatever Path to the Peak they may have, because most of them will be running a 3 or a 2 line of Path to the Peak. It's a great way to bump it. Now, before we go on to the energy, we actually have special energy we're using in this deck. It is the Horror Energy here. This one is very helpful if your opponent attacks your Pokemon while one of these is attached. they get -20. They get 20 damage counters put onto their Pokemon. So great way to add on some extra damage if they decide to attack your Pokemon. And of course, then we are finishing off with a total of, I believe, 10 energy here to round out this deck. So as you can see, I did put very heavy influence onto the Mewtwo V-STAR here. It is one of my favorite cards to come out of Pokemon Go. And I feel like there's a lot of potential with combining this guy and Calyrex, or you could even swap their places if you really wanted to. But for now, we're looking at Calyrex. But as it stands, this is a really good Psychic Calyrex deck. Some other suggestions I would make is if you wanted to, you could put in a Radiant Greninja in place of possibly one of these Cresselias or an Energy, and that way you have more draw support, because as it stands, your draw support is really heavy on the Fog Crystals, the Quick Balls, and your Evo Incense, and of course your Professor's Research. But there's no Pokemon to help out with draw support like you would with a Barrel, obviously Radiant Greninja, or the Inteleon line. Keep in mind, obviously, you are going to be milling a lot of energy that you would be using with the Calyrex, and this guy already has a draw ability on it. Just if you don't want to attach it to a benched Pokemon, I guess you could use the Radiant Greninja. Another suggestion, if you wanted to, you could replace a Training Court or two or something else to have Old Cemetery in your deck. This can help put some pressure on your opponent by adding more damage counters onto the Pokemon when they attach energy. But this is how I would upgrade this deck. There is a lot of the deck that stayed, as you can see here, but there are a few changes that we did make. But let me know what you guys think in the comments. But for now, let's move on to the Ice Rider Calyrex's upgrades. Alright, so for this Ice Rider upgrade, we are using the 3 VMAX that came with it, and we're adding in a 4th here for the Ice Rider. Because, again, you want to have a 3-4 line. They did give us a 3-3 line, I guess for symmetry, but they really should have given us a 3-4 line, which is how most of these decks are played. Now, moving on, first major upgrade is using Palkia V-STAR. And let's not beat around the bush, Palkia V-STAR is one of the best water Pokemon out there right now when it comes to the meta. Palkia V-STAR is a definite add to this deck. And just like the Shadow Rider, if you wanted to flip these two in the numbers, you could have a Palkia V-STAR deck just as easy as you had a Calyrex deck. Now, for the most part, we kept that Inteleon engine, but we did reduce its numbers by quite a bit. Meaning, we took one out of each of the Sobble and Drizzile, and then we took out one of each from the Inteleons. So we are only running a 3-3-1-1 line, but that was obviously to add in the Palkia V-STARs and this Radiant Greninja that I did mention earlier in the other deck side, but this one is really important. It's a water type already, so it's kind of fits the agenda, right? But it is great for that extra draw support if you need it. But this just feels right since it's a water type Pokemon. Getting some draw support, including the search support this way, just a great kind of little addition to this deck. Okay, so let's take a look at the trainers that did stay. Now, I say that because pretty much the rest of this deck is just the same. The only really changes we made were adding Palkia V-STAR. This guy is really strong in the meta. I think you should add it even if you're running only Ice Rider Calyrex VMAX deck. Now, we run those 3 Boss's Orders that came with it. We dropped down to 2 Melanie, which you could add back one in if you wanted it to 2-2 line or get rid of the Radiant Greninja. You could even add all 4 back, 2-2, no Greninja. We have 2 Marnie and the 2 Professors that came with it. And as for the items, those pretty much all stay the same. Honestly, the biggest modification is you didn't need that many Sobbles and Drizziles and Inteleon, in my opinion. I think as it was very crowded, and you would run into issues where you would not be able to draw what you needed at the time. So most of the stuff is just sticking where it's supposed to be. Even the energy is pretty much the same. We still run the total of 9 energy. Now, this one doesn't really seem like much of an upgrade, right? If anything, we downgraded a lot of it that already came. But again, it cannot be overstated how strong Palkia V-STAR is in the meta. You need to run one of these guys. It is almost assured that this guy is going to be seen at the world stage in about a month. And again, as I mentioned, you could turn this into a Palkia V-STAR deck, and honestly, this is almost training to switch it over into a V-STAR deck for Palkia. Other suggestions I would make to add into here is the Starmie V that you can get from, I believe it's Astral Radiance, but that one is able to do a ton of damage, especially in the late game when you need it to. And again, if you wanted to, you could add back some more Melanese by removing a Palkia V if you wanted to, and of course the Radiant Greninja. But I think this is the most optimal way to play the Ice Rider deck, by adding in another strong attacker to go inside with the VMAX. That way, if you need to, you can switch out this Calyrex and attack with that Palkia. Especially if you run to someone that has a really Pokemon heavy bench. That is how I would upgrade the Ice Rider Calyrex deck. So let me know what you think. How would you upgrade these two Calyrex decks? What would you add to them? What would you take away? Leave all your thoughts and suggestions down in the comments. Hopefully you found this video informative, and if you did, get subscribed and leave a comment down below. Again, let me know how you would upgrade these decks. I want to know how you guys would make it different from what I upgraded. That way I can see it and other people can see your suggestions as well. Anyways guys, as always, stay safe and thanks for watching.